Hey everybody and welcome back to my channel. Today I have another video sharing a project with our new stamps, and today I'm going to use the other stamp set, not the Wheat Love. I'm using the Craft collection and some stencils, and I plan to make some mixed media jelly printed tags. And I'm using my, I think it's a 6x6-inch jelly plate and these texture plates that I've made with the stencils. There is a tutorial how I make these with my Big Shot and the stencil over on our blog, and I'm going to link that up in the video description. And I'm using these textures to create the patterns on the gel plate. I'm going to create 4 tags, and I've used the Canson mixed media paper to cut these. And I think finally I will decorate 2 of them and keep the others for a future project. I'm using the permanent red, violet, or purple, permanent red purple from Amsterdam, the olive green, the green turquoise, and the Prussian blue Dalo. And as I said, the smaller jelly plate, I think it's a 6x6. It's not that important, the size, because I plan to kind of a patchwork technique to create the tags. And I'm starting with the pink color, and what I'm doing is I'm pressing these texture plates, which is just normal paper. It's a 200 GSM paper, I think. I'm using the backings of our products, but you can use any paper. It's not important what paper you're using. And I just press the textures onto the plate, and that will give really interesting patterns, and you can use them multiple times. There will come a time when you have so much acrylic paint on them that they no longer work, so you can make some new ones. What I like about this technique is that you do not dirty up your stencil, and over time, when this pattern gets covered, the paper gets covered with acrylic, you can even use this texture plate and stamp on another sheet of paper with it. So you get 2 papers or 2 backgrounds at once when jelly printing. The stencil that I've used for this texture paper is the stacked ovals. It's one of our brand new stencils. All the new products are 10% off until tomorrow. So jump over, I will link up all the new stuff in the video description. I'm going to clean off the jelly plate with my scrap paper. I always have papers next to me where I clean the brayer and, for example, clean these texture plates in between. And now I'm using that green, that yellow, olive yellow, I think is the color, or light olive yellow. I will put the names of the paints in the video description. I really love this color combination, and it is inspired by the colors that I've used in my previous videos with the distress inks. So I would say it's very similar, and I really like the combination. And here I'm using a texture that I made with the new Scribbles stencil. You have 2 sides always, and here it is. I have one side that has more of the impression and one side that has less of the impression. Depends on the pattern you have, and that always gives you a different texture. I really like how these tags are turning out, and I will definitely do this again in the future. Usually I would print bigger sheets of paper and then use them, but I really like that there is some white space on the tags left by using this technique. And I also really like that I don't have a plan on what I'm doing, and the tags are all a surprise, but usually it's always a good surprise. And I really like also the process of that. I think I'm going to add a little bit more of that pink color with a different texture. I also make some tiny textures with our mini marks stencil, which has our marks stencils in a very small version on one stencil. So we have three different patterns. And I'm also going to use these today to make marks on the gel plate. I'm not the biggest fan of this tag. I think the line in the middle is a bit too centered, and I can already tell you that this is the one that turns out not the way I wanted it, so I will maybe never use it again or just use it for something else, do a die cutting with it or something like that. I also really like that I get these patterns on that paper that I use to clean my brayer, because you often can use these as well for collages or for backgrounds. Next, I am playing with the turquoise, and I also plan to use the smaller texture with this color. I really like these mini marks. I think they are super versatile. I used them already on every project I made after I used the new products. When these plates that you make with paper and your die cutting machine are new, they will soak up more of the color on the plate. And here you can see I already was able to stamp it to the other paper. Once they get more used and have more acrylic paint on them, they will not pick up as much as they do in the beginning. I really like how these colors are layering, but that was something I already knew because I played with very similar colors and the distress inks in my last two videos, and I really liked how these turned out. And yeah, that tag is not going to become better, but I really like the other three I have. It's very warm in my studio, and the paint is drying so fast. That's sometimes a bit annoying, but I think using a medium to increase the drying time is also not comfortable, because then you have to wait very long until stuff is dry. So I think I will add another layer of the turquoise to my plate to make a bit more, to bring a bit more of that turquoise onto the tags, especially on the last one. I like to clean the jelly plate in between sometimes to pick up the leftover paint on it. And here just use a Titan Buff acrylic paint, cover the whole plate, and then I will make a print on a piece of paper, and that will clean my jelly plate, and that will probably also give me a nice background that I can use on a future project. I really liked how this print turned out. I think it looks very beautiful, a little bit of grunginess, and that's something I would definitely use for another project, and I would definitely not ruin by rolling my brayer on that piece of paper. As I said, I want to have a little bit more turquoise, especially on that last tag on that, not that one because I don't like it. I don't like that center line, but this one needs a little bit more turquoise. And I'm just going to add another layer with the same texture. I will just use the other side. Unfortunately, I put way too much paint on my plate, so I had to get rid of that. It's always a bit of a problem if you have a brand new bottle of paint and then you get out way too much. As I said, this time I'm using just the other side. That will give me a different pattern, similar but different. And I really like that texture. I really like these small dots or small marks that are on the stencil. Yeah, and I really like to have a little bit more turquoise on this tag. And you can see the paint is almost dry again because it's so warm in my studio. And the air is also very dry. I'm going to clean the plate again with a layer of the lighter color. I prefer a tighten buff or another light color against a white. Usually I think it looks a bit better than a pure white. But that also sometimes I would use white depending on the project or the colors I am using. I think that's also quite a nice piece of paper. I really like the text. The only thing I'm missing is a little bit of a really dark shade of color, so I will use that Prussian blue, but just in small areas. I will not add too much, maybe to this one, just to cover that up because I do not like it, and maybe I can change it a little bit. The center line is not nice, as I already told you, and it's a bit of a mess on the left. Yeah, this color is almost empty, but I'm able to get a little bit out of it. Just enough for today. I'm starting with this one. I try to cover up that top part a little because it's a bit boring. Yeah, not sure if this is helping. But you could always use these kind of papers or backgrounds that you don't like for die cutting and die cut some shapes out of it, maybe leaves or branches or flowers, and that would just it will turn out pretty. I'm very sure because um, when you die cut from a colored paper, it always turns out as a surprise, and that usually looks quite nice. And I'm adding some small accents with this color to all the tags because I really like these darker spots. They increase the contrast and make it a bit more interesting. Again, I'm going to clean my plate with a layer of paint, and I'm really looking forward to that background and how this is turning out. I am now finishing up two of the tags, and I plan to use this stamp set with them. That's our new calf collection number 6, and I want to stamp two of these flowers to separate pieces of paper, and then use them as the focal point. But before I'm doing it, I want to stamp something to the background for some additional texture and interest, and I'm using just the black Versafine clear ink on these tags. I usually would use StazOn, but as the stamps are brand new, they are very sticky. And StazOn is also very sticky, and that sometimes makes it hard to stamp, especially when you have an image that is not only an outline that has a lot of space, like the bird and the flowers. Almost every stamp on this set. And I wanted to make sure that I get a good stamp impression because I didn't want to ruin the text. So I went for the Versafine Clear, and I'm taking the risk that it might not dry, but it will. So at this stage, I was not 100% sure because I'm a little bit, it's a little bit difficult stamping Versafine Clear over an acrylic surface. But as the surface is very thin, I think it does not matter. I thought about stamping the bird also to the left tag, but there is that darker spot in this place, and so I decided not to stamp it. Instead, I'm using the leaves that are in the stamp set, and I will stamp those to the bottom of this tag. I really like the look of the stamps together with the jelly printed patchwork backgrounds. I think that goes so well together. It almost has a graphic kind of style, and when I put the flowers on the tags, it almost feels a little bit like a child book, a picture book for a child. Really like the whole composition and style of it, and that's why I made that stamp set, because I really enjoy these kind of graphic images. And we already had a bunch of calf collection stamp sets in the past. We still have a few rubber sets, but almost all the clear stamp sets are sold out. So I thought it was time to bring a new one. I decided to stamp one of the leaves as well to the other tag, because I think then the bottom is not as empty as it is now. I'm now going to stamp my focal images, and I didn't want to stamp these images in black. I want to stamp those in color, and it took me a while to figure out how I could stamp the first flower in two different colors. I decided first to try it with marker pens. That did not work because those dry too quickly. Then I decided to use the small Memento inks, but I did not take care of the overlapping, and you can see that on the second flower. And here I'm stamping them with a bit of masking, and that works quite nicely. The second flower is a little bit easier to stamp because it comes in 3 parts, and you can also use this part as a pattern stamp to stamp a background pattern, for example. And you also have the option to bend the stem a little bit so you can make it look in different directions. And there's also a leaf, and you can stamp the leaf once, twice, or 0 times. So you can create different kind of belly flowers with these stamps. I'm just cleaning the stem because I used it previously with some blue ink, and I didn't want the green to be contaminated. I also have to clean the little leaf that comes with the flower. And I decided to stamp it 2 times so it looks, the flower turns out to be more symmetric, and I really like that for the graphic look. But of course you can place that leaf wherever you want, and more than just once. I think we could even add a lot of leaves to the bottom of this flower. I really like how these turned out. I will now cut those out and then place them on my tags. At first I thought I would adhere those with foam dots, but then I thought it would be better to leave everything flat. And what I decided to use is the word create from our Mix It Up number 5 stamp set, because I really like that graphic typo look together with the tags. So I'm stamping this just randomly a few times to the background, and I think that goes so well with the rest of these tags. And by the way, the Versafine Clair had dried. That was no issue. It took a while, but it's just fine now. And here I'm using StazOn because that dries super quickly and will not make a mess. Yes, and that's it. I am going to glue these flowers down, and then I call my tags done. I hope you enjoyed today's video, and I hope we will see us next time. Jump over to the blog for some close-up images. Bye!